Hi everyone, welcome back to another IRL episode of the Ops Club podcast. Today, Tom and I are talking to John Nugent. John is the CEO and co-founder of Green and Fortune. He's also was previously the CEO of Searcy and is co-founder and director at Oyster Boy, Daffodil Mulligans and Gibney's with Richard Corrigan. I'm really pleased to have such awesome experience back in the studio today. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Amazing. So, as we normally do, let's start a bit with how you managed to fall into the London hospitality scene.
Yeah, well, I was born in Dublin in Ireland, and I left there when I was 19, having done a couple of years in catering college, and I guess my exposure to hospitality started from my kind of mid-teens. My father was involved in hospitality. He worked on the ferries between Ireland and France and UK. And he was what was called the chief purser then, which was a hotel general manager of the ferries. So I had that influence in the background, and I actually did 3 summer seasons on the ferries when I was a student. So that sort of gave me a taste of real life and hospitality. And then my first full Saturday job when I was a kid growing up was in a butcher's. So there was always a hospitality slant. So catering college felt the right thing to do. So I went to Colbrew Street, but left there as soon as I graduated back in 1989 and moved to London. And that was the beginning of it. And we were very lucky in that the college I was in had loads of links to UK hospitality companies. And one was a hotel company. And that was my first job at the Tower Hotel at Tower Bridge in London, which was, I remember walking into that on the first day and saying, my goodness, 800 bedrooms, what's all this about? And marble everywhere and glass. And say, wow, you've arrived, you know. And then my first job in that hotel was working in back of house, which is the most unglamorous side of life, managing great teams of kitchen porters and silvermen and so on. Yeah, so that was my first job in London.
Wow. It must have been absolutely unbelievable. Working in butchers, bit of work on ferries, into that.
Yeah, and also what was really interesting was that I got under the skin of London culture straight away, because the people I was working with and supervising at the time were from different backgrounds and races I'd never ever experienced, because Dublin was a small town when I was there. It's much different than it is today. So to be around those wonderful people and learning from those different ways, just the religious impact of what people do, how you had to manage a rota because certain people needed certain days off because they had to respect what they were doing, and it was just amazing. It was jumped straight into the diversity and the wonderful nature of the culture in London.
What was the sort of makeup of the workforce at the time? You go straight into that huge, like diverse back house, and this is late 80s?
This is 1989.
1989. Were there lots of Europeans? Was it all over the world?
The hotel itself, it must have had 300-400 people working there, so you would have just attract everybody.
Yeah.
But dealing with language alone was really interesting, because some people spoke English, some people didn't, and you come from Ireland where everybody speaks the same language.
Yeah.
So that alone was an interesting learning curve. Some incredible people and some incredible backstories of people making their way in life and some of their previous experiences and so on, which was just, wow, it just came at you.
Yeah.
When I look back, I did that for a year, and it was a really great thing to do so early in my career, just to say, oh, okay, it's not just sleepy Dublin as it was at the time. So yeah, a great introduction to London.
Yeah, wow. And that's a huge team and a kind of a huge operation to go straight into. Was it always, you always want to do that kind of big format right in the centre of town?
Yeah, I think so. And it gave you a great opportunity to get under the skin of London. I moved over with a bunch of friends, and we all lived together and had a great time. And so all Irish based. But what we didn't jump straight into the Irish scene in London. Yeah. So we said, no, hang on, we're in London. This is exciting. Let's eke out London rather than eke out Ireland and London. Mm-hmm. Where a lot of people I know would naturally go to the northwest London when cricket
right, Kilburn.
There you go. Yeah. So we didn't do that, and it's not saying we didn't go there, but we didn't actually jump in with our 2 feet. Yeah. And being so close to central London, being at Tower Hill, you had everything on your doorstep. When I look back, that was a very important kind of learning position to be in, and just a great introduction to see what this big city was all about.
And what was the industry like? People talk a lot now about how, I guess, certain things are really important to people now. I'm imagining it was different all those years ago. What was it like to work?
Well, we're talking 37 years ago, so it's a long time ago. The high street, I think, was, as we kind of know it now, was just starting in the food and beverage sense, was just starting to slowly happen. But the revolution really came 15 years later in terms of a food scene.
Yeah.
Into the 90s, really. The highlight was the big carvers in the hotels, which were just amazing, and food emporiums, and which had their place and still have their place. But it was just about, I'd say, starting, coming out of the greyness of the past, in a sense.
Yeah, I guess actually back then, like you said, hotels actually were still quite a big part of the hospitality industry from a restaurant F&B perspective, because actually there weren't high streets of restaurants, retail parks of restaurants.
No. Food markets, street markets.
No, not at all.
Grab and go everywhere.
Not at all. It was pretty good, and that you saw these revolutions or these things starting, which was a good place to be.
And you didn't decide that your route was to stay back of house and become a chef and find your fortune that way.
No, and I suppose you didn't take what you were offered, but you just had to look around. And so, I mean, my restaurants was my early part of my career, and then just moving into a broader kind of catering, bar, restaurant, just the whole remit of hospitality and catering, which I feel very comfortable front of house and being amongst people and take great pride in looking after people. That's what we do and unashamedly do, which is fantastic. So I did want to get into that as to get my career going, so to speak, on that side of things.
So you moved on from there to. So was it straight into Searcy's?
Yeah. I left the hotel after a couple of years, and Searcy's had a restaurant. I had one contract at the Barbican Centre.
Yeah.
And I went to run that restaurant for a couple of years, which was really enjoyable, and an art complex. So an interesting place to be, not your typical high street kind of operation. So it's high street plus extra challenges in terms of how you operate, how you work with other partners and so on. And that gave me a really good foundation of seeing restaurants and bars and catering operations from a different perspective. On the high street, you've got one customer base, which is the customer who comes in through your door. In the sector that I'm in and spent a lot of time in with Searcy's, the customer base is very different. And so there's a lot more to consider. So that was great. So I did that for about 3 years, I think. And it was time to do something else. And at the time, the company was doing nothing else. So I politely left for a year or so. And then they came back looking for me because there was a plan to take in a different direction. So I did a year in a restaurant and bar in the West End, which was really interesting. And then went back, and then we started a serious journey with Searcy's.
Interesting.
Yeah, which obviously culminated in you taking over CEO.
I got lucky.
At the age of 35. Was it 35?
34, 35, yeah.
Which is incredible, like meteoric, and a huge role to take on at a young age. But I guess you've been with them for a long period of time, so you were really embedded in that.
Yeah, and I think originally when I joined at the Barbican, they had their existing business, which was an outside catering type business, an events business. And then just the one contract. And it was clear that the real area for growth was in the contract side of life. And so much so that in my time with them, that we closed down the outside catering part of the company because it was better to focus on what the opportunities lay ahead for us. And when you look at that period of the late 90s in particular, it wasn't quite a gold rush, but there was a lot going on. You were approaching the millennium, which probably people don't even remember what that was.
Just about.
Just about. And it was the arts and cultural sector in particular was awash with cash.
Yeah.
Because of the Millennium Commission at the time. And they were doling out funds to, bring everything back up to a great standard and extensions to the national museums and galleries and all that kind of stuff. And what was really interesting around the time that we had a very good reputation, so we were being asked to look at things a lot. So it was a big project going on in London and beyond. We mightn't bid for it or we mightn't want it, but we were asked to go and speak to people. So that was a very nice place to be, reputation.
Yeah.
But that period of time was a real catalyst for it. Big things we did around then would have been the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden, which had been closed for a number of years.
Yeah.
The extension to the National Portrait Gallery. Then we did a Gherkin in the early 2000s. And it was just loads of really interesting projects coming on. And also, I think the quality within that sector was improving all the time as well. So, and we would have been part of that driver with our competitors and friends in the sector. So that was a really good time, and a good time to be growing and to be doing interesting things.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the world of contract catering. I was very briefly. There was a moment where I was going to go into it, and I learned a little bit more. Fascinating world, but really interested to understand a bit more about the challenges versus a kind of direct consumer bit of hospitality.
Yeah.
But one of the things that it does give you is access to like iconic spaces. The things that you just mentioned, the Royal Opera House, National Gallery.
Yeah.
You couldn't just open a restaurant there unless you were in that world, right? How was that that must have been an incredible experience, kind of reimagining these iconic spaces.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, and it was daunting as well. You were
responsibility.
You've been given the crown jewels in a sense. And you go in and promise everything at a presentation is, I've got to do it now. But you know what? And it's been a recurring theme. You take these businesses on and you break them down into their component parts. But I think the most important thing about it at the very outset is to make sure the relationship is right with those organisations. And to make sure, because you are in someone else's building, you're in someone else's home. So behaviours have to slightly adopt. And some are very easy to adopt, but some are a bit more challenging because there's maybe a lot of history, or it's been done a certain way, or there's conditions, and it's interesting. There's a chap who I worked with over the past couple of years, and he's in the creative industries, and he says, well, before they ever take a client on, they have what they call a chemistry meeting with the client.
Yeah.
To make sure, are we okay here? Are we aligned? Is this going to be okay? When it goes wrong, are we mature enough to be able to mend it together?
Yeah.
And I guess that's what we were probably doing, but we didn't call it a chemistry meeting.
Yeah.
That's the key to it, is pick your partners well and make sure it's... And I think it's moved on to a more significant degree now to get that right. And we would, without sounding anyway arrogant or anything, we would walk away from potential opportunities if we just didn't feel like it was going to be okay.
That was going to be my next question, was like, have you actually ever felt that it maybe wasn't right?
Yeah, you do. You say, oh, no, maybe their culture, it's not necessarily a bad culture, it's just sort of, maybe we're not the best people to operate in this building. And there are companies that have a different approach or maybe have different skills. And I think you've got to be brave to say that, because if you go for everything, you're going to have a dud every now and again. But you shouldn't be walking into a situation where you think there's a problem waiting to happen in year 2 or year 3, and there's nothing worse. And I've seen it. I've seen some people do it. You commit to something, and you know it's not going to be quite right. Then you have to go back and renegotiate. You're not in a good place, right? So that's quite important.
What did you have a solid criteria around what was going to work, or was it a gut feel thing? Were there a few people that just went in, kind of sniffed the air, and went, "This doesn't feel right"? Or, So how did that work?
Some of the criteria is, can you create something really good and really interesting?
Yeah.
And does the business opportunity support that as well? Is there a business there?
Yeah.
Or if there's not a business, is there a good reason to do it because somebody really needs that service and is happy to pay in a different way for it? You've got to make sure there's something there to play with.
Yeah.
And that's important. Also, can you do it? Sometimes you can't do it.
Back yourself. But can you actually do it?
Is there somebody better who might be able to do it? And you say, maybe you might step aside. Or we say, no, this is definitely for us. We want this. You chase it down. But again, I think the people side of it is really important. And that you want to work with these people and they want to work with you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like my perception of the world of contract catering is not at all that it relies almost so much on relationships. Yeah,
it does, And actually, and the term contract catering is probably the wrong term for what we were doing. It's hospitality. It's restaurants and bars with an added complexity.
Yeah, it sounds much more like a partnership, or that it is. We signed a contract. We will fill the contract.
We talk about partners in our business. We don't. Of course, it's a client contractual relationship, but we talk about partners and when we talk about working together. And if we were in a presentation recently, which we didn't win, and somebody described themselves, "I will be the lead client," and my heart sunk. I said, okay, will you? You're going to be the lead client. And I'm sure this individual would be a great lead client, but that's not our language. And it always is a lead client in the end, but it's just the way it might have been set up and so on. I think the connectivity with the people you're working with is important.
Yeah. Is there ever one that you gnaws away? You think that got away?
There's many. There's one or two you would. But you don't talk about them.
I won't go there. But let's keep going on Searcy. You moved through. You're building this business. There's new contracts. You sharpened the business into the focus.
Yeah.
And you're leading it, CEO. And I'm sure there's some steps in the way.
There were many steps in the way. Yeah.
Tell us how that was, stepping into that.
Yeah. Well, it was a very traditional company. Owned by family-owned by two brothers, who were wonderful, slightly eccentric Englishmen who I still see now and again. But what we had to do, we had to bring it to a modern age.
Yeah.
Because we were not going to get into to where we got it to if we were continuing to run it. It was founded in 1847. You got all that history, and 1847 was stamped everywhere. I said, "Oh God, how are you going to convince them that we're cool and give it to us?" But people do that. You employ the right people around you, And suddenly the conversations change. They're more youthful, more energetic, more specialisms and so on. So every site we opened, I think we ended up, before I left, we had 20 sites. And so every site you brought on new people with you. And that gave you a real chance to just build on that more modern foundations. And that really helped bring us to how we were perceived in the marketplace. And also just the way you behave. It was great having the tradition, but then you could also tell a modern story as well.
Yeah.
And I think we managed to get that positioning quite right to be able to grow into all those wonderful things. And also we were again selective of what we went for. They had to have scale. We didn't want to go to something that was just going to be quite passive. We wanted ambition in these sites, that you could do interesting things which would eventually just mean the business grows and the opportunities grow.
Yeah.
So there were really good days and difficult days. Every year you were opening 1 or 2 sites and nothing was the same. So it's not like you got a branded restaurant and you say, okay, well, we've got
same footprint.
We got 3 shop fitters. One of you will do it. You got the opening team. You got this. You literally were doing everything from scratch with a lot of knowledge and so on.
But a lot of them are heritage places or potentially just very regulated.
Regulated, a certain standard required. Yes, but that level of those logistics and that level of complexity was what we're good at, and that's what we brought into what we do today. So that didn't faze us. And it's interesting, when we were employing people, say, we want people from the high street, but some people that we employed from the high street, they couldn't get it because they might say we were a bit sort of hamstrung, we were told what to do a bit too much and be like, but equally it's how you handle those things. And so there's a certain subtlety of doing it.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges of doing this, not sort of a constriction. It's one of the things that you need to solve, a problem to solve in the business.
It really feels, again, differently to how maybe I first imagined contract catering, that it is a real blend of logistics and hospitality.
Absolutely is. Yeah. You look at the Royal Opera, isn't it? You've got to feed 300-400 people in an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
From kitchens that are the size of this studio. But that's what we were good at.
Did you enjoy the kind of logistical challenge of it versus just the pure creativity of what's this space? Or did you sometimes think, I wish I could just do this space as a straight kind of restaurant?
Yeah, but we were kind of in that mould where we were ready to solve a problem, We worked with some amazing chefs at the time who would not have been getting the kind of chef credit that they would have got if they were somewhere working in the high street or working in the... But they were as good, if not better, than the named chefs.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to partner with people now and again, and these chefs would come in and see what we were working with, and they say, I could not do that. That's quite interesting, which is really encouraging in terms of the people sense. There are so many different opportunities in our sector.
Yeah.
If you want to go and chase the line and be a top chef or restaurateur, you can be that, but there's a huge amount of opportunity in very fulfilling roles, paid very well.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be maybe the most creative chef. You might be super productive.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you think there are certain people that are naturally pulled in that way or succeed in that way versus...
Yeah, for sure. There's a guy I know, he's the head chef of the Emirates Stadium up in North London. And I'd say Neil Copland is one of the best event chefs I ever worked with. And that's a big thing when you think what events look like.
Yeah.
We've met some wonderful people over the years that are just the top of their game. And would put sort of other specialist chefs not to shame, but into their specialisms.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And they're probably doing something that is maybe slightly more balanced lifestyle.
It can be.
Or maybe it's a better pay situation, or maybe less personal credit and name recognition. But which is one of the things that we talk about in Ops Club like a reasonable amount, is that let's try and move away from this idea that hospitality is always a nightmare. It's always challenging. It's always super long. It is always challenging, but it's never easy. But it can be a good balance and lucrative and positive and tons of opportunity. And I think that's what you're describing is a really interesting world where there's tons of creative opportunity and lots of interesting things.
And you need to be exceptionally organised.
Yeah.
And you need to have 2 days worth of food in the fridge ready to go. There's loads of unwritten rules. Yeah. It must be like that, and you must have this. And because once the door's open, you've got nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
If you've got 2,000 people coming at you, you said,
Especially in the event world as well. It's like it's happening now, and it's never happening again.
But not ready, you're in the weeds.
Yeah. I guess there is an element of, if I describe it as straight to consumer hospitality or whatever, that it's unrelenting. It's sort of relentless every day.
Sure.
You open the doors, it's always going. Yeah. But it's slightly less pressure in terms of that kind of one-off event, huge events. Do you enjoy that? Curating those huge events and delivering on that?
Yeah, it's interesting to look at the shape of my company at the moment. We're Probably about 65-70% of what we do is what we call hospitality or events or conferences or parties or kind of booked things.
Yeah.
So about a third is retail, restaurant, bar, cafe stuff. And that gives us a really good blend of services to offer. We're very comfortable doing a gourmet 5, 6, 7 course tasting dinner for clients. But we're also very happy making a really good cup of tea or a good coffee. I try to take as much pride in making a coffee as you are creating this wonderful event. Which means we, again, go back to what I said earlier, we employ a lot of specialists.
Yeah.
People who are just top of their game in their wonderful world.
Does that provide its own sort of challenge? Are you employing them permanently, or is it lots of...
No, mainly permanently, because our business is 24/7 nearly. It's 52 weeks a year. So we're not an event caterer that goes out to other people's buildings to run events. We only run events in our own buildings.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, so you need a fixed army for that.
Yeah.
And that goes back to making those decisions right at the early stage. Is there opportunity in these businesses that we go into?
Yeah.
Can you scale it? Can you make it bigger and better to create opportunity for people to flow through the company and so on? And also, you find that the restaurant teams want to get into events because they want to see something different rather than just running the restaurant floor every day.
Yeah.
So it can sit very well together.
Yeah, it sounds like it works really nicely.
Yeah.
Thinking about where you are now, with having your own company for it's been
18 years,
almost 20 years, and some amazing things, been recognised in amazing ways. Going back to that first appointment as a CEO at quite a young age, is there anything you think, God, I wish I knew that now?
Oh, loads, yeah. You're a bit embarrassed with some of the things you might have said or thought was going to be good at the time. Yeah, I mean, you got to make mistakes, haven't you?
Sure. Yeah.
But you wish you had that knowledge all the way through. But I think naivety is also a good thing in young people.
For sure.
I look at some of our young managers, and you might cut them short sometimes when they talk. You say, just let them talk it through. They'll get to the right outcome in the end.
Yeah.
But I think like all these, you hear people say it, but it is true. When you might have got it wrong, just mend it quickly. Get back in and say, "Oh, didn't get it right." Or I think that's what you do. But many naive decisions or things I shouldn't have done.
I guess having that optimism or naivety, it gives you a bit of momentum to just push through, and it's okay to make mistakes. That's something that certainly I've figured out quite late in my sort of leadership career of like, it's actually all right not to know everything, not to pretend to know everything and all that stuff, and just make a mistake but fix it and don't do it again.
But also now with maturity and age, I think it's important now to listen to the next level coming through, our executive teams or our senior people, because I might have the knowledge of history and how to do things. There's so much new things that are currently happening that I would not be good at anymore. So you've got to create the platform for people to be able to do that and to say, okay, they're right. It's not for me to say no to it.
I can imagine that probably does feel a bit uncomfortable at times, but it's fascinating. One thing I saw recently, I don't know if any of you guys follow, but I've been following the Coat marketing team a lot recently. That brand is trying to get revamped, and they've been working really hard on it. But if you look at the content they produce and the things they do now, I can imagine that's not coming from the exec team. That is coming from probably a young Gen Z marketing team, which is
and a brand needed to make a change.
They've obviously got. But it's super exciting. Whenever I see a campaign or a thing, I'm like, this feels really modern. But I can imagine it's not comfortable, maybe.
And also, it's allowing headroom for people, to give them space to grow and to support and amend what you're doing all the time. So I think the days of rigid structure are gone. I think we need to be nimble and so on, because our world changes significantly. There's always cost pressures. There's always different challenges that we're faced with. So you do need different influences for sure.
You're with Searcy for a long time. You get to the point where you decide to leave and set up on your own. But was that something that you always wanted to do? Had an itch that you wanted to scratch? Was it?
I think I always did when I look back. But the question is how? How do you do these things?
Yeah,
you got the skills, but how are you going to raise some money? How are you going to find the opportunity and so on? I got a phone call back in early 2000s. From an architect that I'd worked with on 2 projects. They were the lead architects on the National Portrait Gallery project and the Royal Opera House project. And we were heavily involved with them in terms of design of restaurants and bars and facilities and so on. And so I knew them very well over the years. And they ran me out of the blue and they said, look, we've got this new client. Any chance you'd just come and have a cup of tea with them and say some nice things about us? I said, yeah, sure. I said, tell me a bit about it. He said, so he's doing this amazing new building. He's going to build 7 floors of offices. He's going to have restaurants, bars and cafes and event spaces. He's going to put 2 concert halls in. And he's going to put 2 galleries in. I said, wow. I said, well, that's interesting. I said, where's he going to do that? And this is 2001. He said, King's Cross. I said, I definitely want to meet him. I said, knowing what we all knew King's Cross was back in the 1990s and 2000s.
So you had the vision, even from that moment, to be like, this is interesting.
Yeah, I did, because if you look back, slightly digressing, that King's Cross was always going to happen, but it never happened. And there were master plans over the years and so on to make it happen. And it was still a dump. It was a fame for many things, but not hospitality.
Certain types of hospitality.
Certain types of hospitality, okay. And by pure coincidence, I've lived in the area most of my London life. So I just knew something was going to happen. And then to make it more interesting was that when the government decided, it was decided in the 90s, but it took them maybe 15 years to complete it, that they were going to move the Eurostar from terminus from Waterloo to St Pancras. I said, that's a game changer.
Wow. That's a really long-term vision. But was anyone saying to you, like, you're crazy, John?
Yeah, absolutely. King's Cross.
Yeah.
I remember bringing people up and when the site was being built and it was just this massive, huge hole next to the canal. So that's going to be something. I said, yeah, okay. Yeah, let's go to the pub now. So I went and met this wonderful man called Peter Millican. And he was a developer. As is generally true, you look at developers and they're part of big organizations and they have big head offices and so on. This was a one-man band who had been successful in developing a couple of buildings up in Newcastle. And he was just undeveloper-like. And so we met and we had a lunch and showed me some plans. And I said, I wouldn't put that there, I wouldn't do that there. Just chit-chat. And from that sort of it started. Him and I got to know each other over the intervening period. And he said to me one day, he said, any chance to take a day off work and I'll get a driver and we will drive around London. Can you just bring to the 10 hottest places or for breakfast? What you think is good at the moment. I'd like to get into your head. I said, okay.
Sounds like a terrible day.
That's not a bad day, is it, And then we ended up at the end of the day I'll never forget it, up in the Draper's Arms up in Islington, which was owned by a friend of mine who sadly since passed, Paul. And so he said, what should I do? I said, you're a developer. I said, go and get X restaurant, X pub there. I said, they'll pay you big rents over time. He said, no, don't like that. He said, would your company do it? I said, no, they wouldn't do it because it's too risky and the deal that we would want, I don't think you'd want to do. He said, okay. I said, what's the other option? I said, I think I'd like to do it. But I said, it's probably not as easy as me doing it. He said, okay, you'd like to do it? I said, I think so.
Yeah.
And then he said, do you want to do it with me? And I said, yeah.
It was just like that, almost in the course of a conversation, you locked it in.
So the next morning, you check your private emails as you do every morning. He said, John, how about this as a structure? Should we do this together? And I think it was 4 bullet points. I still got the printed off email.
Amazing.
And that's how it happened.
Yeah.
And that's 20 odd years ago because it took time to build and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's how we came to be in a sense. Wow. And we're amazing friends. He is not quite a silent partner, but he's not active in the front of the business.
Yeah.
But a great man to have in the business.
Yeah. Does he influence the sort of hospitality side of it as well?
Yes. He knows what good looks like, and which is important. And it's also good to have somebody behind me as well that's supporting me in a very interesting way. Yeah. So I read a while ago that partnerships, the average length of a partnership lasting in business is 7 years.
Oh, really?
And we're 20 plus now, so I'm very proud of that. And there's no chance of
increasing the average.
So that's how that kind of happened. And it was kind of an odd time because going back into my career, I was still with Searcy's, and we were just selling the company for the then owners, and there was quite a difficult path to try to tread, really. We wanted to do the best for the company, but knowing that my opportunity was coming and so on. So we got through that all really well in the end, and still admire what that company does still. Yeah,
absolutely. You must have been absolutely buzzing that meeting, that opportunity, knowing that was kind of there, delivering the sale of Searcy's, and then being able to walk into this incredible opportunity, but really quite daunting as well, potentially.
Usually daunting because even a lot happened up to the opening, but just we knew it was going to be a long-term plan to make this happen because there was nothing, because the hoarding was still up in King's Cross, and what the main developer there, Origin, have done has been incredible. Yeah, but they hadn't done anything. They were just still talking, and planning. So in 2008, when we opened, there was nothing else there. We do lay claim to be the first new operator in the area in this modern era. But we knew from day one it was going to be difficult because they had to create a market that didn't exist.
Yeah.
And that was untrustworthy. They didn't trust the area because of history.
Yeah.
Now, what's happened in the intervening years has been incredible, but that took time too, you know. And you look at the backbone of our business in King's Place, as an example, is our events and conference business.
Yeah.
And that's a very successful part of the business. But creating that was very difficult because the corporates didn't want to come to King's Cross. You speak to your friends in the banks and institutions and say, come on, just fancy doing an event here? I said, no, we do the city in Mayfair. I said, okay.
Yeah,
but the tech companies took a chance on us.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of tech work on the event side in the early days. And then everybody then followed. And then they moved into King's Cross, all that kind of stuff. Look at it now.
Huge tech.
Yeah,
Do you think that was serendipitous in the sense that the traditional banks and financial institutions sort of didn't really want it, so it created this opportunity?
And now all those institutions are desperately in King's Cross as well.
Yeah.
So it goes full circle.
Yeah.
We knew, it didn't matter what the climate was, we knew it was going to be a tough one. And that's probably why it took us 7 or 8 years to open our second site, because we had to fight off the storms.
Yeah, you were straight into financial
recession.
crisis, straight into recession.
In Lehman Brothers went down, I think 10 or 14 days before we opened, so the whole world just... And I remember sitting in the bar with Peter one evening, and it was a Tuesday evening, I'll never forget the evening, at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and there was nobody there.
Yeah.
And I said, oh God, we've made a big mistake here. But you ride it out, and this is where it is today. How we structure that business is quite interesting too. We said a little bit earlier, the term of contract catering is the wrong term to be using around what we do, because we took the risk of taking a significant lease on that building, which gave us a really good base in the end to be able to think longer term rather than just, we've only got 5 years here, we've got to think we're under a license here.
Yeah, right.
So while that was pretty onerous in taking it on, it was the best thing we ever did, because it gives us a very strong foundation, which then allows us to expand from there.
Yeah. And is that a common thing in contract catering event space? Is it usually a sort of 5 year, quite short
It can
term,
be. You can be 3 or 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And there's a number of factors that influence that. And that's, again, it goes back to choosing your partners correctly. You wouldn't go to a girl or a boy if you only said, I'm going to go with you for 3 years, would you? Say,
We're in it forever until we're not.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So again, that's another influence of the business you look at and so on. But so that was very important. And if we hadn't got that kind of length of tenure and beyond, we wouldn't have got through. Yeah. So taking a longer term view was very important.
Do you always have faith at that point? Because I really remember, I think the King's Cross development, the whole piece, it's certainly in my lifetime, the most unbelievable transformation I've seen in London.
Yeah.
It's transformed a complete area. Like, it's amazing now. And I've operated a business in that development. I remember walking through it. My friends lived up the Caledonian Road, and there was sort of nothing there. And then Coal Drops came first, I think, and then
Granary Square came first.
Oh, sorry, Granary Square. Then
Coal
Drops
Drops,
adjacent. And it's just started to appear, and obviously in King's Place, and there was like a shrimp place.
Shrimpies, in the old garage.
Garage, and that's come and gone.
Yeah.
But if you came to London now, you just know it as this iconic, beautiful space.
It's well maintained, it's clean,
amazing,
it's safe, it's wonderful. Yeah.
I can't think of another development. I think the Victoria, the Nova space is good.
It's good,
It's good,
but not as big.
On scale,
I think the only thing similar is Stratford.
Yeah,
it
is.
But again, whole different reason.
Different reason. And I think one of the reasons why I see King's Cross being successful is that you've got education. So you've got the University of the Arts in the same market. You've got residential of all different types, which is great. And you've got good food and beverage, and you've got a young, transient type workforce.
Yeah.
Also, one of the significant reasons is there was one developer doing the whole project. So you look at other parts of London. So you look at Battersea. Battersea is mainly the power station, but there's loads of other smaller developers doing other stuff. So it may not be as cohesive. I don't know.
But it like bleeds into Vauxhall, doesn't it? Like it's just...
Yeah, but with King's Cross has been master planned. Roger Madlin was a chap who basically made it happen. I remember meeting Roger in a church hall back in the early 2000s, and he's there over there with pop-up banner saying, "Oh, it's going to be great here," and he's been murdered by the locals. Yeah. But you need determination, and that's
of course,
and time.
It must have been so disruptive for people that live around there. It was just a building site for ages.
And you've got to remember, all those lands where all these wonderful new places are, they were contaminated lands from the coals, all the gas, all that stuff.
I mean, that was a big bet.
It's a big bet. It's a long-term big bet. Yeah,
but there are moments where you thought, thought, we've got to unwind this. We can't do it.
Yeah. The biggest thing, and which I only had to manage it once before in my career for a short time, is managing cash flow.
Yeah.
When you got a business, you just, God, do we have enough money coming in? And how are we
Yeah.
going to... So they would have been the sleepless nights. I was confident of the product and that we would get there, but can we ride this out?
Yeah.
And there are things that you can't come into your team on the next morning and say, I'm worried about cash flow, because you do that. Oh, geez, okay, I better look for a new job. So there are some things as an owner that you only experience.
Yeah.
And the challenge and the pain of some of those things. But that was the overarching, are we going to be okay?
Yeah. I think myself and my business partner, we expanded 3 sites. We had to sell 2 of them. And there were moments where we had the sleepless nights and the challenges, and it was, post-COVID.
Yeah.
Huge inflation, energy bills, energy crisis,
Yeah.
and just killing the business. And I think there will be no one that will understand what we went through, personally, professionally, because you have to get up every day.
You do,
and project
and put a face on,
and deal with it and move.
Yeah.
Just keep solving the problems until you're at the end of it.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And even personally, I think people that would say, you always seem to be all right, but I think there were some real dark sort of moments. Have you always been quite an optimistic, sort of driven person that can deal with that?
Yeah, and I think, planning and forecasting, having good people around you that can take 1 or 2 good confidence that you can say, is that okay? Or, just leave it to me. And so, having trusted people around you, and which I've managed to do. I've got 3 or 4 really great people around me. They've got great teams around me, but people that I can call upon to say, they have that, Ellen, is it okay? Okay, fine. If Ellen says it's okay, it's probably okay. So that's helped. But that's today. It was a much lonelier place 18 years ago, because you didn't have the resource, didn't have big teams. You were taking deliveries in as well of a morning, things.
You mentioned you took quite a long time to decide to grow.
Yeah.
Do you think, when you see lots of other businesses these days, do you think people are rushing to grow?
You look at the broad sector in hospitality and bars and restaurants. I mean, you look at the amount of money that's been thrown into that sector over the past 15, 20 years. It's just been immense. And sometimes on what might be seen as a good run is like the Wild West, But then you look at some of the outcomes today, you say, I'm not sure that's where people are sitting today. It's not where they wanted to be. And you look at private equity as an example, awash in that kind of casual dining world and so on. But a lot of those PE companies they're a bit stuck now. They can't get out. The rule was always 3 to 5 years. There's a lot of people sitting in there and say, well, is the value increasing, or are the loan notes increasing? Is the interest increasing? What is the real situation? So in a way, doing it our way, it's not the sexiest way of doing things. We're not looking for global domination. We are growing at a good rate, and we've got a couple of new projects that we will hopefully embark on this year, early next year. But it's doing it in a measured way, not taking private equity cash in. And not that I'm anti it. It's not needed from what we want to do. We take some bank borrowings if we need to do that in a business sense, but only with a very clear mandate. So we probably could have grown a bit faster, but we would have had to probably bring some people in, which we've been lucky not to have to do that, because we can keep the whole culture and the DNA of the company where it is. It works best for us.
I personally love that. I see people announcing funding and these and I'm just internally roll my eyes a little bit.
Because you've seen a bit of it now.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of it, been part of bits of it, and actually I think building sustainable businesses, growing them and having them wash their face is probably it's the sexier thing for me, to be honest.
Yeah, it probably is now, because as there's a lot we could name as. These PE companies are just sitting there saying, I'm 7 years in. That wasn't the plan.
And there's no end in sight, really.
And then in that time, some of these brands can become less sexy or less interesting and less relevant.
Definitely over that sort of time.
It's something that we've talked about a lot. First, what podcast we ever did, we talked about the brand cycle of a well-known sort of American diner, burger brand, and that it grew and it shrunk and it's not what it was now. There's so many brands going that life cycle. It's almost there. I can't really think of anyone apart from Pizza Express who's lasted a sort of serious length of time, 50, 60 years, 70 years.
And not without challenge.
And not without challenge. And it's very different to what it now to what it was then. And you see it so often, brands blowing up to scale, but you think, where's the end of this? And where's the return? And then all of a sudden it collapses. And it's almost just like it's a hot potato, and you don't want to be left holding it when it collapses.
You look at David Page, an investor and a very smart operator. He said last week, maybe the max in any portfolio is 50.
Yeah.
Where back in his day, he would have been over 150 or more. He said, when you look at some of the towns around the UK, they just can't sustain
Yeah.
a brand that sort of you've got to bring to market.
Yeah.
And he said, then you get to those numbers, and it's diversification. Is it outside the UK, or do you go into retail? It was a really interesting take on it, where, you know,
interesting.
he would have been the man, I suspect, and he's banging the drum for UK domination
Yeah.
previously.
Yeah, and I wonder where that drive comes from. Is it external property companies or advisors saying, look, here's the demographics, here's the sort of
Yeah.
the data pack that suggests you could have this square footage in this location with these demographics. It's going to work. Man, you can do 70, 100 of them.
Yeah.
Off you go. And then PE
But I
guys
guess
go,
the problem is the models that previously, you know, a market town that could do 20k a week would
Yeah.
still make you
A
10,
margin.
15%
Yeah,
margin.
yeah.
Probably doesn't anymore.
Doesn't
Yeah.
anymore. No.
And so then you just need to take more, and it's
And he was suggesting, which is the way people are eating out these days, and
Yeah.
the working home culture and stuff, and there's just not enough money to sustain all these excessive number of restaurants. Doing it our way, I think it's measured, it's sustainable, you know, in the true sense of the word, and I think for us it's a very good way of growing a business.
and I think that kind of leads on nicely to this side to talk a bit about Green and Fortunate. What it is now in terms of values. It feels like a very values-led organisation.
Sure.
When you read about it, it comes across as the partnerships. You've talked a lot about partnerships and
Sure.
relationships and how important they are with your supply chain, with the people you work with, the spaces you're in. I guess you can do that to a much more genuine, authentic degree when you don't have to return at a really aggressive rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it feels like maybe Green and Fortune has been the culmination of all of those things that are important to you. Is that
Yeah, and I think it's only when you get to a certain size that you can confidently talk about those things in a greater sense, because, you know,
Yeah.
and I think we're maybe just coming into that kind of zone a bit now. So the people piece in our business is very important. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to get right for any company, because there are loads of moving parts. I think, you know, giving our beverage people and our chefs and food people a good free rein at doing good things and wanting to work with good suppliers and so on, not being tied to big corporate structures.
Yeah,
But then what comes with that is then we have to be very disciplined.
yeah.
So it's not all, oh, it's lovely, let's just do what we like. No, we have to hit we have to hit numbers. So you can have that freedom once we know what the outcomes need to be also. So it's not all, oh, isn't it a lovely world? We try and get that balance really, really right. We have our own farm up in Matfin in Northumberland, and that's Peter's farm. And so we take all our beef and lamb for King's Cross from that farm. And that's, you know, that's making life difficult for ourselves.
I was going to ask you, is that something that's like a wonderful accident, or is it just...
I remember the first delivery of beef and lamb from the farm back in September 2008. I remember the day. And we had all these tenants moving into the building. The building was going to be occupied by 3,000 people, and the loading bay was packed.
Yeah.
Next of all, this refrigerated van turns up with 20 animals in it, you know, dead animals. You know. And then you laugh at yourself, you think you know everything, and we knew nothing.
Yeah.
And we said,
fridges
okay, how are we going to... We built a hanging room to hang it all. I said, okay, how are we going to get it from there down the lift to there? I said, okay. I said, well, what's the best... I said, get the trolleys out. We put the first chunk of meat on a trolley, and it collapsed. And there was blood everywhere. But anyway, so that's a very fond... You know.
Yeah.
But I think what that does... And we perfected it. We have a butcher who works for us full time. We got an apprentice butcher as well.
Yeah.
What that does for us, it sets our stall out.
Yeah.
So we take that, the essence of that, in terms of what we buy and who we buy it from, and it creates a good culture around food.
Yeah.
And so we have a map of where the majority of our food comes from. And it's a lot of it is around London, on the outskirts of London.
Yeah.
And that's very important. So that is great for our chefs, in a sense, to say, okay, that's a good starting point. So although it's not a complicated process anymore, by doing that, you create something that sort of people say, oh, okay, that's a point of difference.
Yeah, it sets a stand, and I guess it instills a sense of pride.
Sense of pride,
The team, they know where it's coming from. It's a quality product. It's all of that stuff.
Yeah, but it goes beyond that, which we've only kind of learned and spoken about in recent years. So you actually, by doing that, it actually creates these behaviours.
Yeah. Is there a tension between commerciality and obviously margins? We're in a world at the moment where margins are squeezed tighter than ever. Is there a tension there? If you had to change the way you do things because of commercial realities, or have you always stuck to it, hoping that it will be a positive cycle?
We are lucky that the business mix that we're in allows for Some elements of the business are very high margin,
Yeah.
in the food margin sense,
Yeah.
and some are average. Restaurants are average because you deal with more premium product and
Yeah.
sensitivity on price. Where some of the event menus, as an example, can be very high margin. So having that diversity in the business
Yeah.
allows us to do that. If we were a strict hamstrung kind of restaurant business only, it might be a bit more difficult.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Having independence as a business allows you to take that broad view of your mix and do that. Whereas if you perhaps had some pressures from above, it might be more pressure to silo.
It's a nice to have rather than a But no, it helps us to find who we are.
Yeah, that's great. It's great, and then it can be this positive thing that you talk about that begets more.
Well, in a very simple sense, what happens is Ian and Lynn, who are the farmers, they get it to the slaughterhouse, and then we get our refrigerated company to haulage company to go up there and take it straight down to us.
Yeah.
Now, normally, by the time it even got to the slaughterhouse and then got to us, in the normal food chain, that could change hands 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
So you look at the miles travelled as an example, as one thing.
Yeah.
You look at if it changes hands one time, there's a margin, another margin the second time. It actually adds up in a sense.
Yeah.
And while there can be, there's always a debate around beef and the effect on the environment. So we're trying to mitigate that by saying, we're taking it there and we use every bit of the animal.
Yeah.
And because of the diversity of our business, it means we can get rid of cheaper cuts on certain menus. So menu creation becomes a really interesting topic with our chefs and so on to make sure we're using everything and avoiding food waste.
Yeah.
We can counterbalance an argument because there's a sustainability element to it as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Have you ever whipped out your butchery skills?
No, they're long in retirement. I've got 2 little scars on my hand here from my butcher. That's the only memory.
Amazing. I wanted to talk a little bit about the other bit of your business, which is Daffodil Mulligan and Gibney's. And so a partnership with Richard Corrigan. So you've quite a well-known sort of name.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Sure.
So that feels. I read a bit about your partnership, and it sounds like a kind of friendship, real genuine sort of long-term partnership.
Yeah.
And again, goes back to that idea of building really good relationships and
Sure.
those long-term relationships. That seems to be a core of what you do.
Yeah. So Richard was involved with Searcy's.
Yeah.
At one point, and some of his business partners are ex-Searcy's people as well. So I knew Richard in that era.
Yeah.
And I remember on a Saturday morning, going into Romilly Street in Soho when he had the Lindsay House and clearing those kitchens out before they were going in. So we got history. We got really good history. Yeah. And I did some work for his company over the years and so on. And Richard's a very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And that's a friendship built just on 2 guys trying to make their way in life and talking rubbish some evenings. But so the site came up. There was a very good operation there called Nula. And sadly that failed. And it was run by, I didn't know him, but I had a really good reputation. It was run by an Irish guy. And so we said, should we have a look at it? And another partner called, a wonderful friend called Tony Gibney, who runs one of the best pubs in Ireland in Malahide in Dublin. Just incredible business and a great guy. Tony, Richard and I sit next to each other up at the Emirates at the football. So we've had some really big days and nights.
Are you a gooner?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. Long suffering.
You're on edge at the moment.
When we also have a few and you say, we must do something. Yeah. And we set up one too many times. And then we said, let's do it. So we did it. So we opened that in November 2019, just 4 months before the big C, big COVID.
I remember it opening.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and then thinking,
I know, will it survive it?
What a shame.
We were just getting into a really good run. We'd had amazing critical review, and it was just starting to find itself. And then, of course, stop start. We were in our pockets to try and throw a few quid in to keep it alive and so on. But we stuck with it, and we've got 2 distinctive brands there now. You got the Daffodil Mulligan, which is a fantastic restaurant. Really great cooking going on there. And then we got a bar downstairs, Gibney's London, which is a great place to just socialise. Open to everybody, big sports focus, music at the weekends and so on. And it just comes together really well and represents, dare I say, myself, Richard and Tony quite well.
Yeah. Is Tony Irish as well?
Yeah, Dublin guy, yeah.
There's a lot of talk at the moment about Irish hospitality, or Irish people in hospitality maybe, or Irish influenced businesses like in London having a real moment, having a resurgence, or moving beyond the traditional kind of idea of an Irish pub.
Yeah, what it looks like.
Look and feel thing.
Yeah.
And like Gibney's, you talk about it as a Irish bar, Irish pub.
Yeah.
And we've talked with a few guests who are from different parts of the UK and different countries as a kind of a regional hospitality being a very specific thing. I'm interested in what you perceive to be Irish hospitality. So there's a perception of Irish warmth or charm. But how does that translate? Does that have to look a certain way or feel a certain way?
I think it's got to be in the DNA.
Yeah.
Because you travel everywhere and you see an Irish pub, you say, yeah, okay, how Irish are them? If you want to see the best of what modern Irish hospitality looks like in London and beyond, but mainly London, look at what's called the Murphia list on the Hot Dinners website that Gavin and Catherine Hanley do. If you're ever short of saying, what does modern Irish food look like or influence? The chefs and restaurant people there, I only know half of them, where I used to know all of them. But all this wonderful emerging talent and running really interesting businesses that are not the Irish pub look to it.
Yeah.
And doing really interesting things in London and beyond. And I've got a list, and there's about 6 I haven't been to yet. I want to see what these young, smart people are doing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's changed out of all proportion. And so it's not the cliched Irish pub anymore.
I've just opened a new business, and I was sitting there, and a guest was saying, have you been to this? Have you been to the Devonshire? I was talking to another guest. He said, it's an Irish pub down in Piccadilly. And I thought, it's not really an Irish pub, is it? But obviously they assumed it's Irish because one of the partners is Irish. And I don't think it gives off any. Maybe it's got the more positive elements of what you might consider Irish hospitality. But I find that interesting that has been picked up as. Do you find it frustrating that there's bits of like Irish pubs, Irish bars, or things get pigeonholed as
they can be, but it's kind of in that tourist kind of thing.
Yeah.
What the Devonshire does great is Irish hospitality.
Yeah.
The sense of it. You go in there and you're served quickly, and there's people in the bar, and there's a buzz there. Yeah. But it's not like going to a remote part of Ireland and say, oh, I'm going to this traditional Irish pub. That's not the Devonshire. The Devonshire is a much bigger and much smarter business.
Modern restaurant kind of.
Absolutely. And that's what Oisin does amazingly well.
Yeah.
Know? But that would help the notion of a differing landscape of Irish pubs and Irish hospitality.
Yeah.
Away from the more cliched O'Neill's type.
Sure. Yeah.
Although I walked by O'Neill's on Euston Road yesterday and it was packed. And that's been there, 20 odd years.
So there's people, X7B people here, like we've spent far enough time.
There you go. So hats off. It looks smart. Yeah. There's a place for everything.
Yeah, and it's arguably not particularly Irish, but it's trading off an idea of Irish.
What it might look like,
yeah. Sort of Disney version of it.
Yeah. But that's probably a good example. But there's some very high standards in that organisation.
Yeah.
Run, clean, invested. So you say, okay, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and extreme structure and standards that mean it's never going to be really awful.
No.
Touch wood. But it's probably never going to reach the real heights because it's sort of restructured. It's a very difficult question, but what would you think Irish hospitality, what does that kind of mean? What does it stand for?
I think we've been lucky that people are very welcome to, say, Irish chefs and Irish entrepreneurs in the UK.
Yeah.
Some people over the years have been banging that drum and so on. And there's a new generation coming through as well, so it's reinventing itself too. I think you've got to also be careful that if you proclaim to be doing something Irish, you've got to do it well. I was in New York recently, and you walk through Midtown and so on, and every pub's got an Irish flag outside.
Yeah, sure.
Really.
Yeah.
And so that's so they say, that's just where Tony Gibney, he's got 2 bars in New York now, and one is traditional Irish.
Yeah.
And one is what modern Ireland looks like.
Okay.
And the modern Irish one is what we probably call a spirits-based pub. So away from beer swilling. And so you look at the audience and say, that's a cool demographic.
Yeah.
So I think whatever you do, you've got to do it well. And not sort of, not everything needs a harp above the door, you know.
We talked about King's Cross development being an iconic, game-changing development for that area.
Of its time, yeah.
And potentially the next project that Green Fortune are going to be involved with could be in a different part of town.
When the opportunity presented itself, that's how we thought. That was our thinking.
Yeah.
That's an area waiting to happen. It's going to be well invested in the whole master plan of that area over the next number of years. And we said, okay, what have our learnings been? Can we take something? More and more these days, you've got to create a narrative and create a story around everything you do. And sometimes a lot of words are wasted on it, but it helps you get to a finishing line or to a point.
Yeah.
Say, okay, we're doing this because of this, and here's the backdrop, and here's what it could look like. So, when we were bidding for it, we employed and worked along some amazing individuals to just approach the bid for this business differently than we've ever done before. because we just recognised the significance of it was, of what the opportunity, the business opportunity, but to do things differently.
Yeah.
And I remember when the brief came out, and I rang the consultant who was putting together alongside the people at the museum, and I said, I have never seen a better brief in 30 years. So they had thought it really well through. And I said, we've got to look at this very differently, how we would traditionally approach what you'd call a catering tender. We employed probably 3 or 4 people just to help us almost narrate it.
Yeah.
The video content we did, which we'd love to share with the wider world at some stage, was just first rate.
Yeah, man. And that's something you hadn't done before?
No, we might have touched on it here, Debbie, but no, we said if we want this, we've got to really respond. And not just to respond, but to get under the skin of it. Yeah. To convince people that we know what they want. Yeah. And there's some more news to come out on that in the coming month or two about some partners that we will be working on that with. And again, that'll elevate the project. Yeah. And just different ways of approaching it. We feel very positive, and we went to a very competitive tender. I imagine 30-odd people down to the last 5, down to the last 3, and we were hanging in there. And what we did enjoy is, going back to what we discussed earlier, we enjoyed the chemistry. Okay. With the people that we are now partnering with. Tenders are difficult and take a lot of time. It costs a lot of money. Yeah. Complicated financial structures, all that kind of stuff. You're doing a 10-year business plan based on nothing, no historics. Yeah. But at every point, they were good discussions. Maybe the outcomes were not always what you wanted to hear, but at least there was a good logic to what we were all talking about. Yeah. And that kind of culminated in our last pitch to them, and where we did just something. We hired a dirty old lockup in Dalston in East London, and we transformed that into 4 different sites. Oh, no way. Incredible. With music, and it's just incredible. I mean, it was the best bit of work we've done as a company, apart from opening King's Place. Yeah. And great. And so the opportunity is huge. The people working on our side and their side are really interesting. And from speaking to colleagues in the sector, one guy said to me, this opportunity, there's nothing like it coming to market in London over the next 3 or 4 years. So it is seen as the biggest piece of new business in London. Yeah. He said apart from Stadium. So when the shortlist would have been dropped to say to 5 or 7, we would have been the smallest company in there. Yeah. And certainly the last 3, we were the smallest company in there. Yeah. In terms of size, but not in terms of ambition. Yeah. So we're extremely excited. We've got a whole afternoon over just reviewing the strategy this afternoon to make sure we're all aligned and so on. And it feels good, and it's going to be a really interesting offer when we get there. And what we want to do is break the mould of what people might think museum and gallery catering has to look like. Can we have a bit more fun? Can we do something more individual? And that's where we are very good as a company, that we don't need our brand anywhere near it. That we do not need a Green and Fortune bar. Yeah. We don't need it. Mm-hmm. If you want to call us something else, it's fine. Call it a different cafe, it's fine. But anybody who wants to know who's operating, they'll know, because and that's where we will fit very well in there. We will work to the aspirations of the museum as well.
Are we allowed to say where it is?
Smithfield.
The London Museum.
London Museum, who've been at the Barbican for years.
Yeah. I was worrying whether
it's out there.
I thought maybe you had some secret knowledge that everyone else didn't.
I've been on holiday. I've been opening the site and I've been on holiday. I don't know how long this has been out there for.
No, it's in one of the old meat markets. It's been beautifully transformed.
So at one point I worked for a company. We had a couple of pubs around there.
Oh yeah.
And we always talked about we were always trying to recreate. We were trying to open really early and recreate the heyday.
The early house.
And the butchers would come in, or the white coats would come in and have pints at the end of their shift, and dovetail into this breakfast for the workers in the city. But that really died off, and that area just hollowed out extremely quickly post-COVID. Obviously, you've got the Elizabeth line,
it's a game changer.
Which is going to be, it feels like that would have been huge for the area, but it's almost been delayed a bit because of the slowness of the growth. But it's been waiting. It feels like the area is waiting for the market redevelopment. Yeah, it is. And there's a long-term plan for that. It'll be a new Covent Garden type. And connect up those slightly disparate bits between Farringdon and the city, which is really close. Yeah. There's that new development behind there. I don't know what it's called. There's a few where Ibai is.
Near Bart's Hospital.
Yeah, exactly. Bart's kind of place.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's some Club Gascon and iconic businesses around there. But then that area struggled a
Yeah.
bit in between, and the market
Yeah.
itself is struggling.
So the location is a game changer.
yeah,
They're suggesting 2 million visitors a year. I think it'll be more than that.
yeah,
But even now, you look at the top of Elizabeth line. I went to have a beer in Henry's place, Bush and Racine, there a few weeks ago on a Saturday afternoon.
yeah.
And the place was swarming with people.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just because it's
Cracking.
transit.
Yeah.
And we go back to saying the game changer of King's Cross. One of the reasons that in the end where King's Cross was very successful because it was of its transport links.
Yeah.
And then you got north, south, east and west covered between the Thames Link and the Elizabeth line. It's a wonderful interjection.
Yeah, I'm really close walking to some balls and what was it?
Barbican's nearby. And, all that stuff. Yeah. And also, it's the Corporation of London. When they get it right, they get it right.
Yeah.
So they're a great local authority. They invest for the long term.
Yeah, serious.
And so you see they'll want to get that area right. You know?
Sure.
Yeah. Again, going back to why I think King's Cross was so good, it had one developer, so you got one authority doing that.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, and I want to sort of touch on that optimism because this is something that we were talking about before we started rolling. Is this kind of slight doom and gloom in hospitality at the moment? And I think I've obviously been through a lot of changes in the market, a lot of grown, a lot of businesses. Sure, seen some boom times, some tough times, but you seem to have this constant sense of optimism that really comes across both in hospitality as a industry and also in the opportunities out there.
Yeah.
I think I saw a quote that you said we're coming into our most dynamic era of London in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
That's an optimistic picture versus quite a lot of doom and gloom out there. Where does that come from?
I think we said it before. We've never had it easy.
Yeah. You want to make easy money?
I
Do something else.
I can't point you to a 5-year period and say, God, we did nothing and we did really well. So you've got to work at things. You've got to work hard. And I think maybe more ambitious companies do it differently, and it's more roller coaster for them. But we're a bit more measured.
Yeah.
We'll only get out of the sprinting blocks if we think it's going to be, because you can't afford too many howlers.
Yeah.
And look, I think we all have views on taxation and what's happening, and it is bloody difficult. But let's get on with it. Let's find a way through it. And there will be realignment. The sector does need a bit more support generally. It would just help investment. You look at the youth unemployment figures at the moment, and it is awful. And it's going to get no better under the current regime or the current tax regime. We did pre-COVID. We had this great scheme. We had a Saturday job scheme with Islington Council. We'd employ 8 people over the year and give them 8 or 10 weeks' work and pay them a bit of money. And they would come in, and by the end of it, they'd be a barista or they could make a couple of cocktails, whatever. And we didn't really need them in that business, but it was a good thing to do. You're looking after local communities and so on. But we can't do that now, because we'd have to pay them £15 an hour.
Yeah.
And we were doing it for the generosity and enjoying it and seeing some amazing young people come through who you transform not their lives, but their being in 8 or 10 weeks.
Yeah.
But so we're not taking those risks anymore, which is such a damn shame, because you've got to give opportunity to people. Yeah. So there's a lot of unintended consequence of changes in the tax regime or government policy that I don't know they mean it, and I'm not political at all. But they're getting it wrong on a number of levels. The thing is, unemployment among the under 24s in this country has gone up by 1 million people over the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, many other reasons as well, but we can solve that problem or help solve that problem. But it's a challenge.
Super enjoyed the conversation, John. Just one more question from me, I think. Yeah. If we go all the way back, been through a pretty awesome 30 years, 35 years. If you were able to go back and talk to yourself walking through the doors of that hotel for the first day 37 years ago, what do you wish you'd known?
What do I wish I'd known? I think I would have completely underestimated the opportunity that London can give people. And maybe if I knew that, I might have done things a little bit differently or maybe a bit quicker in my career.
Interesting.
But you've got to look and learn, haven't you? I'm a firm believer in our sector and the wider world. If you work hard and you really want to do something, and as I say to all the people I mentor or advice I give to our young managers, I said, be nice to everybody. And I said, be even nicer to the people you don't like or you might not like, because you just never know when
you never know
when that call will come through.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened with myself and those architects, Dixon Jones, that I worked with on those 2 projects. They created an opportunity for me to meet a man, and then it all just... So,
and for me, it's a lovely place to finish on, because actually part of the reason I started a community was because actually I just have a really big belief that connecting people is so powerful. Yeah. So Thank you for bringing us back around to that.
Thank you very
It's been
much.
an absolute pleasure.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
John.
Thank you, guys.